that don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hi guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful co-host, Melissa.
Hello, JD. How are you?
I'm doing great. So before we get started, I just want to remind you guys, if you're getting value from these podcasts, make sure you give us a review, share us on Facebook or whatever social media you can. We're really trying to get the podcast out there and get more listeners, bring more value. Speaking of bringing value, especially for some of our military listeners, I think we got a great show. It's going to be a great show today. I'm happy to introduce you guys to John Sharkey. He's the COO of VictoryBase. This is a company doing a lot of big things, especially around military bases, which I'm sure we're going to get into. John, thank you so much for finding time for Melissa and I today.
No, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, both JD and Melissa, and thanks for having me.
And it's EY.
Yeah, Sharkey with an EY.
That's right.
Right. That's right. If you're looking for me, Sharkey with an EY.
Yes.
Awesome. John, so for some of our audience members who maybe haven't heard about you or what you guys are doing over there at VictoryBase, can you give us kind of where you started, how you got to where you're at, and then we'll see where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. So VictoryBase, as the name suggests, really does have kind of a military connotation, and that's where it was born from. The idea really came from our founder, Tom Paquin, who started this business and thought about it 25 years ago when he was a young Marine Corps officer. He was flying F-18s. And he had to move around all the time. And I experienced the same thing when I was in the military as an Army officer. You move quite often. And so what I like to say is folks that are out there protecting the American dream don't have an opportunity to partake in the American dream, because by the time you move from one duty station to the next duty station, you are really wiping out any kind of transaction, wiping out an equity value based on transaction costs. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, how do we come up with a plan where military folks can get value from that monthly payment that goes out every single month, that's just not throwing away your money on rent, or not living in on-base housing where you don't get any sort of housing allowance. Or if you buy a house at one duty station and then all of a sudden Uncle Sam gives you orders to move 2 years later, or even sometimes less, a year and a half later, do you hold on to the property? There's a real big dilemma with home ownership and gaining equity for military folks. And so that was the problem that we tried to solve. The solution came with VictoryBase, and really what it was is, hey, let's give the opportunity to the residents, the folks that live in the homes outside of military towns, and we capture a lot of military folks. We don't solely have residents that are military. We do have civilians as well, but how do we get these folks to partake in some equity value? And so we went through the SEC, we filed a Reg A. It's not for the faint of heart. You really got to go through a lot of trouble, both legal, administratively, financially, to prove yourself. And what you're doing is offering to the public a valuable investment offering. So what we did is we offer the residents an opportunity to buy into the company that invests in the real estate that they live in, and other real estate across the portfolio of where we have exposure. And so right now we really started in earnest, I'd say 2019. I joined in 2019 with Tom, and we didn't own any real estate assets. And now we own 4 real estate assets. One in South Carolina. It's a fully stabilized community outside of Parris Island in the Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort. We got one deal in Tyndall, outside Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City, Florida, which you guys know all about, that area or the market. And then we've got one in Arizona. We got some land in Arizona that we're developing, and we have a property that's an apartment property up in upstate New York, outside of Fort Drum, New York. So that's it. That's a little bit of the gist of the business and where we are.
Awesome. So the way that I understand it is you guys have created a fund that is investing in these development, or I assume that they're all development deals.
Most
is that
of them,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did acquire an existing stabilized apartment property. We then acquired from a home builder who had a subdivision, and we bought single family homes from that home builder, and until he was complete with that full subdivision. So that's how we've acquired deals, and then we're developing the Arizona property and the Florida property kind of right now as we speak. Those are under different stages of development and pre-development.
Sure. So now with your business model, are you guys holding on to these assets, renting them out, and then paying your investors with the cash flow? Or are you creating, doing the development and then selling them off and paying your investors out that way? Which
it's mostly a buy and hold strategy. And so we buy these homes, or we develop these homes. We find the residents for them. And we actually try to avoid terms like rent and landlord and tenant and lease, because those are all sort of familiar to the rental industry. And we're trying to get into something that's new, sort of like a market leader, where we're saying, hey, nobody else out there is doing this, but we're trying to create an opportunity for those folks to have equity in the business. So we call them residents. We call them investors if they actually invest in the business. It's not mandatory, but if they do, we call them equity-based investors. So they get their, it's very similar to VictoryBase, but equity-based. And so really, it's not, you use the term fund. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a fund, but we really created an entity called VictoryBase Corporation, and we had to file with the SEC to get approval through Reg A. And underneath that is a warehousing company called VictoryBase Holdings, which actually holds the actual real estate assets. But in essence, they buy in and they buy shares of VictoryBase Corporation, and VictoryBase Corporation effectively invests in the holding company that owns all the real estate. And so they get exposure to the real estate assets that are across the portfolio, not necessarily just the real estate asset that they may live in. Right. So that's kind of how it all works. And then the share price grows over time, much like, say, a REIT share price would grow over time as it appreciates, as cash flow gets better, as we decrease our operating expense load, and things like that. So that's kind of how it works.
Can you, just because most of our listeners are, beginners to middle, sure, can you break down just if we were stationed there, how that would be and what kind of opportunity that would be?
Yeah, and I'll even give you a real life example. So we've had residents that live in our property in Beaufort. It's called Windsong. It's 48 single family homes that are all in one neighborhood. And so right now, if you wanted to go onto our website and look up some of the houses, we have a few that are coming up as you have some natural turnover, folks are moving. They would go look at the house, they would go and see if it was in the right location, it was the right size and the right fit and the right trim level that they wanted. And if so, they could schedule a showing, an unattended showing. We've got all smart lock. We're smart home kind of friendly. So they could set up a showing, get a code, go in, actually see the place if they wanted to, without having, to have some property manager type of person or leasing agent follow them all around. Or they could call us up. We answer the phone and we would talk through them, all the things that they might want to do. And then they would go through our application process, which is seriously just a very standard application process that most people would be familiar with when they would be, renting a home. But again, we don't use the term rent because we want to really imbue that ownership mindset stuff. So they would apply if they met our criteria. We would, reserve that place for them to live upon, paying a security deposit. And then the real magic to it is we would give them an opportunity to buy through an equity subscription agreement shares of our company. So, hey, we'll put you on a program over the next 12 months. You'll buy, this is just an example, 10 shares at $10 a piece, because that's the current share price. And, that'll be the program with which you are. And occasionally we'll run programs where we offer if they become an investor, we offer a discount in their monthly payment to live at the place. So effectively, a discount in their, quote unquote rent. So, and really, if you don't mind me kind of blabbing on a little bit, but really the whole point of this is investors and owners treat things differently than when you own something rather than when you just rent. And so that's the whole point of it, is that they'll be more likely to do preventative maintenance through a checklist system that we put together. They'll be more likely to take care of it. They're more likely to report up to us that there are issues with the property or issues in the community that may affect the overall value. And they're more likely to just treat it better than if they were simply just having a landlord-tenant relationship, and that was it. So that's really the whole point. And we tried to put it all together by creating a system. We developed our own app called it's a VictoryBase app that you can go on and actually take care of your home, really all the tools that you need, manuals, preventative maintenance checklist system, how you pay, how you report maintenance issues is all on this app. So we really gave you the tools through an app to manage the house that you live in, give you an opportunity to buy into the company that invests in the real estate. And of course, we give you a house to live in as well. So long story short, that's kind of, that's how it all works.
And so what do I get for buying in?
So what you get, right now we're running a program where you get a discounted rent, but you also get shares of the company, and that's an asset, just like having shares of any company. It's a financial instrument that you own, and that's what kind of accumulates over time if you stay within the VictoryBase network.
And so when we got transferred to another duty station and we vacated the property, then what happens?
So just like any asset ownership, you can, especially in a financial security asset ownership, you can hold on to it. Okay. You can hold on to it forever, for as long as you want. You could sell them. We do have a broker dealer that we're dealing with, and you would effectively say, hey, I'd like to sell my shares through the broker dealer network. It's not going to be, until the company's really mature and large, it's not going to be like posting something on E-Trade or on Charles Schwab and having your money liquid in the next day. We're hoping to get that way when we get really large and get some scale. But we would put, if you had an interest in that, then you could liquidate your shares by selling it to somebody through a broker dealer who would try and find a buyer for you. Again, you may want to sell your shares to somebody that's in the neighborhood. So, I want to buy those shares from you. And then it would be the share would be, the exchange would be transacted through the broker dealer. But it's meant to be a long-term investment. You see a lot of Reg A investments out there in the real estate world. And so all of them say, hey, this is really a real estate investment. So it's really meant for long term. So we try and really reinforce that within our community.
So talk to me a little bit. Okay, so is this a publicly traded company? Are these only accredited investors that can come in and be a part of this? Or is it open to anybody? What do you got to do to qualify?
Anybody. And that's really why we had to go through the SEC. Of course, a Reg D offering is still regulated, so to speak, through the SEC. But this one is really for non-accredited investors as primarily the target audience for this folks. And so the reason for that is really by definition of why we exist. We're trying to give something of value to the to the military folks. Now, most military folks are not accredited investors, as you would know. There are people that get up every day and work hard to protect the values of our country, and they're usually not have enough money to be an accredited investor. Now, sometimes you do. You've got someone that's rather wealthy, or that's in the military, or they've married a spouse that's rather wealthy. But for the most part, it's all for non-accredited investors. So it's anybody that self-selects and self-reports that the investment that I'm giving to VictoryBase or any other Reg A offering is less than 10% of my annual income and less than 10% of my net worth, and a few other qualifiers as well. So anyway, those are the folks that we're looking for, folks that want to get some exposure. And you can read our entire offering and everything like that through Reg 1A that's on sec.gov. You just type in Victory Base Corporation and you can see that very publicly.
That's great. Now, what is the benefit that these investors are receiving? Are you paying dividends, or is it just as the stock price goes up, their equity stake in the company goes up? What are they receiving from?
That's really it. I mean, that's exactly it. You nailed it. It's dividends when we decide to issue dividends. Now, we're not structured like a REIT. A REIT has to pay dividends to be qualified as a REIT, up to 90%, or I think the rule is 90% of their cash flow has to get out and distributed to the shareholders. We're set up as a corporation, as I said before, VictoryBase Corporation. So really, what we're doing is taking the investment capital, reinvesting it, growing the business, getting scale, building that network. So we do plan in the future to issue dividends potentially, but not necessarily. But the more dividends that we issue, the less money we have to really grow the business, and the appreciation of the stock price would go up, would suffer and wouldn't go up as much the more dividends you pay. So we exactly how we're going to do it, is to be seen. But really, that's how you gain value by share ownership, is getting dividends that are pari passu to what you own, or the share price goes up.
Awesome. So what are you guys doing to manage? Because what we know from personal experience, that managing single family homes on a large scale is a lot more complicated and a lot more difficult than managing apartment complexes or one roof with many doors, as opposed to many roofs and many doors and many water heaters. What are you guys doing to manage that? How are you tackling that aspect of operation?
I don't know. I was going to ask you. It's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, property management, I like to say, is, death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's just so many little things that you have to be on top of, and you got to be willing to kind of do that grunt level work to make it all work well and work smoothly. It's definitely work in progress. I mean, we're trying to improve every single day, but what I'll tell you is a concept that we came up with called resident-based property management. So resident-based property management is what we're trying to do through our app. And it's a term that we use because it spells out exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the most efficient person to do preventative maintenance, light repairs, and that type of thing, replacing consumables like batteries and light bulbs and filters and air filters. It really doesn't make a lot of economic sense for somebody else to go do that. So we're giving the tools necessary for the person living in the home, the resident, to do the property management of the home they live in. And why are they incentivized to do that? Well, they own a piece of the company that invests into this real estate anyway. And so that to me is really the essence of the whole thing. And so we're trying to develop this program where folks take ownership of their home. They said, this is my home. And an analogy I like to use is when you're in the military and you go, you're a young soldier and you get sent to the arms room to pick up, you don't go and pick up the Marine Corps' weapon, or you don't pick up the U.S. Army's weapon at the arms room. You pick up your weapon, right? So they don't necessarily physically own the weapon, but it's theirs while they have it. And so while they're living in our homes, we want them to think that this is my home, and that's the kind of ownership that they're going to have in it. And so we're trying to solve really for a great resident-based property management system. And so that's what we're doing.
Okay. Well, when I was in the Air Force and I go to the armory to pick up my gun every single day, later on in my career, it was easy, right? Because I was the guy inspecting. But when I was young, the only reason that the young guys were making sure that their weapon was functional and clean and good to go was because there was someone double checking them. What are you guys doing to double check that the right amount of stuff is being done?
Oh, no, that's excellent. So we do, like anybody would want to do with a large, expensive asset, is periodically check up on it. We have created this tech system where folks have to upload pictures every single month of what what it is that we have them do. So we took no small effort in trying to pick out 6 to 8 things every single month from a preventative maintenance checklist. And we're trying to think of kind of a different name for checklist because it sounds too much like work, but trying to rebrand it for something a little bit more palatable. But we are trying the tech product that we have is, hey, I changed my air filters. Here's a picture so we can actually see a date stamp on the air filter that's going into the HVAC system. This is a picture of my lawn after I mowed it. So, and that everybody lives with a camera in their pocket nowadays. So it really is marginal, the amount of effort to take a picture. And so we're, really the sell to the residents is, hey, the more you just take a quick little 1-second picture and upload it, the less work we have to do, which means the more money stays in the system, of which, hey, you own a piece of this anyway. So that's kind of the whole concept and reason behind it.
Awesome. Well, John, if we had either listeners that were interested in investing, or we got a lot of people right down the street that might be interested in getting into your Panama City property, where would we send our listeners so they could find out more about VictoryBase or more about you and what you guys are doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, 1 or 2, 3 times a day sometimes. So I'm pretty accessible on that. VictoryBase.com as well. You can find our corporate phone number on there and give us a buzz if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Or you can hit me up on email. I'm Sharkey at VictoryBase.com, JSHARKEY at VictoryBase.com, and be more than happy to get an email from any of your listeners and kind of sing the Victory Base song, if you will.
Awesome. Well, John, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on our show today, and thanks for trying to help out military communities.
Yeah, and as we kind of go into the season of Memorial Day weekend and everything, just always want to take the opportunity to say, always remember those folks that sacrificed and gave it all to our country. And I certainly don't, and hopefully your listenership, which I'm sure they will, think the same way. So thank you much for having me on.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.